I remember his beautiful hair. He had such beautiful hair. I remember the physical memories. I remember his tiny, expressive hands, tiny and beautiful, but so expressive, and his tiny feet that he was so ashamed of. Very, very small feet. I remember it's sensations more than memory, really. I remember he had beautiful, soft cashmere sweaters that my mother used to buy him, and with, for that time, crazy colors. I mean, canary yellow and pink. I remember him with his pink silk pajamas, hugging him, and the lovely feeling of the pink silk. And he had an old silk Japanese dressing gown, which was from the 30s, that he'd been given in Japan.
I met Charlie Chaplin. I don't know. I can't really remember. I think it was at some English aristocratic lady's house. Oh, do come to this side of the room and meet Charlie Chaplin.
My father knew Switzerland. He came to Switzerland quite a few times. He went to St. Moritz and other parts, Lucerne, I think, as well. But no, my mother was pregnant. She was expecting me, and they had to settle somewhere, really, because they had nowhere to go. But it was out of pure luck. Someone said to him, I think he was on his way to Geneva, said, there's a property for sale, you should go and see it. And he saw it, and he just fell in love with it.
We arrived here, I was 6 years old, and it's such a beautiful garden, and it's got a huge forest, and it was much, there wasn't the highway going past the house, or it was really very countrified, and it was magical. I loved the place.
The people in Switzerland are very discreet, so really he could go around and not be bothered at all.
I was horrified. I mean, I wanted to go back to America, the United States of America, where all my friends were and my school was, and I wanted to tell them all about England and Switzerland and all the places I'd been. No. We were never told, though, that we weren't going back. It suddenly happened that we were in school, and we kept thinking, well, we'll go back. We were never actually told, you're not going back to the States.
Well, my father, he had, I would say, had about 12 people working for him here. Between there were two nannies who looked after the children. There was a chauffeur, a maître d'hôtel, a cook and a cook's help, and there was 3 gardeners. There was ladies who cleaned the house, and all that was part of the setup. It was like a small village.
He would do great imitations of, he would imitate Truman Capote, sensation. He would imitate the Queen of Spain. He would imitate the people that we knew. And he would do, if we would go out to a restaurant, he would always order truiteau bleu, because he knew that would be a big success, because we all, whenever the truiteau bleu came out, we would all go, oh, Daddy, it's so awful, oh, look at his eye, oh, how terrible. And he would take up the plate, and he would kiss the trout on the lips and go, Emma, my darling, I haven't seen you here, Emma. And we'd all go, oh, Daddy, how can you? And he would ask for wine, and he would do the thing of tasting the wine. He would smell it, he'd look at it, and he'd sip it, and then he'd go, and then he'd say to the waiter, très bon. And he was funny.
I remember at the time, we got the first television, black and white TV. It was during the time when programs started at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and finished at around 9, 10 o'clock at night. And my father would watch Swiss TV, I think there was only 3 channels at the time. But then, yeah, you'd try and watch it and enjoy it. And it was the only television in the whole house. So once in a while, he would let us in with him so we could watch TV with him. Then, after a few years, color television came in. So he bought a colored TV, and we were absolutely thrilled because he gave us the black and white one to put in the children's room. And at the time, the colored TV didn't have the same kind of quality of colors than what we have now. So he didn't like it at all. So what is amazing is he gave us the colored TV, and took back the black and white for himself.
My mother used to show his movies, 16 millimeter. And there would always be a fight beforehand because he never wanted to, let's see a movie. And he would always say, no, 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 come on, no, it's not, no, no. Please, let's see a movie. And we'd all beg and beg. And he really didn't want to see the movie because he was scared that maybe it wouldn't be good. Maybe this time it wouldn't be good. Maybe too much time had passed. Maybe his children wouldn't laugh. But then when it was on the screen, he was the best spectator of all. And he would look and he would say, that's good. That's very good. Oh, isn't he funny? That's really good.
The main thing is that they were a couple that really did love each other. And I mean, they had difficulties. There was a big age difference, and they had hard moments. But they stayed together, and they were happy together. And I think that left that did leave an image that a man and a woman can live together and be happy and love each other, which is it's a very beautiful image to hold.
She would manage the house, the staff, look after the children, so that my father could have all the time he needed, or to write his autobiography, or to write music. He depended on her a lot.
And he had friends like Graham Greene, Somerset Maugham, who I remember coming by the house, Noel Coward, a lot of actors and people who'd come through, traveling through Europe, would come and visit him. But as kids, they were just friends. We weren't really aware of.
Émile Rossier didn't speak any English, and my father didn't speak French. But somehow the communication, he was a little bit deaf, Émile Rossier too, and he would say blah, 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 blah in French, and my father would go, oui, oh, oui, oh, oui, oh. He would see his face and he'd say, oh, no, oh. And so they were the best of friends, the best of friends. And I remember one Christmas, Émile Rossier had a couple of drinks and he was getting very profound and very deep, and he said, Charlie, in French he said, dans la vie, jamais rien n'a été défendu, which means in life, nothing was forbidden to me. That's been my problem. Nothing has been forbidden to me. Défendu. And my father heard défendu. He thought fondue, which is a Swiss dish. And so he said, oh, fondue, yes, but raclette, which is another cheese and potato dish. Raclette. Raclette is so much nicer than fondue. And Émile Rossier, well, he accepted that. He said, oui, yes, the raclette. Oh, yes, we must have a raclette one day. But as I was saying to you, Charlie, rien ne m'a été défendu. He went on and then went, oh, oui, oh.
Well, I remember Father Christmas turning up, the real one, because he always turned up with the policeman. The policeman always guaranteed that was the real Father Christmas. He would come, he would sing about 3 songs. He had a fantastic voice, an operatic voice, and he would sing in the hall. And at the end of these songs, then he would throw sweets to us and walk out again. And as well, we had the Christmas carols sung by the choir from Nestlé. It was nice, but for the children it was a bit difficult because it wasn't the kind of music we really liked.
He composed the music for a lot of his old films that didn't have his music to them. He wrote The King of New York, the script of The King of New York, and did all the preparation for the film. He did The Countess from Hong Kong, which is another film. He wrote the script and prepared the whole film here. He wrote a final script which was never made into a film, and he wrote his autobiography while he was here, which took several years.
The interesting thing about his music is he says himself the music is the counterpart of the picture. So it doesn't mean because something is funny on screen that the music has to be fast and funny.
Oh, I read Marlon Brando's book, and according to Marlon Brando's book, I mean, Marlon Brando despised my father. But they seemed to get along quite well on the set. And he did a beautiful performance. I loved his performance in that.
This Is My Song was a very charming, romantic, slightly old-fashioned song, And I wasn't sure that it was the right thing for me to do. But it was actually my husband who talked me into it. And he was right.
They rehearsed scenes a lot. It was nothing was done in 3 takes. It was done again and again and again and again. But the funny thing about it is you'd hear the grown-ups talking and saying, you know, Sophia Loren, she's very nice. And, you know, she really works well and she's great. But Marlon Brando, oh God, he's a difficult man and whatsoever. But funny enough, when Brando wasn't working, he would come to me and he would start playing with me and show me how to do knots and how to do lassos and everything. So I have a very good souvenir with him.
They sent me what we call a backing track. That's like the orchestral backing track to which I was supposed to sing. And it was very difficult because they sent me one of these big tapes, you know, that you can't listen to. We had to go to a radio station to listen to this tape. And I didn't like it. I didn't like the orchestration. And so I thought, okay, so I'm not going to do it. But we got Ernie Freeman came in from Los Angeles, and we worked together for a day on this song in Reno, and a week later we were in the recording studio in LA, and he did the most wonderful orchestration, the perfect orchestration for that song.
Making that film was very difficult. First, it was in color, and the color at the time wasn't very good, so he wasn't pleased with it. And secondly, he was working with a whole new team of people, and he was held by a time schedule, which he never had that problem before. He had his own studios in America, and he would work always with the same people, and people were on the payroll, and he would come into work, or he wouldn't go to work. You know, there he had to, and it was, I think, nervously, and it took a lot of energy out of him to make this film, and he did it, but. I think deep down he knew it wasn't exactly as he wanted it.
I recorded it first in French. And Pierre Delanoy's lyric was beautiful in French. Then I did it in Italian and German. But I really didn't think that I was going to do it in English, because I didn't think it was right for America and England. But Sonny Burke said, "Carl, come on, Petula, do it," you know, and so I did. And I had no idea that they were going to release it right away, but that's what happened.
Everything I learned from him, I learned watching his films, not from him personally, because it was so strange. When I started in movies, I made Dr. Zhivago, and he saw it, and I was waiting for this constructive criticism. Okay, but then he became a father and a fan, and he said, "Oh, you're the best thing in the movie." I said, "No, wait, please help me." He said, "I can't, you're wonderful, you're extraordinary." And so I never got any constructive criticism, any lessons, anything from him, because everything he saw of me, he thought I was the best thing in it, and it was terrible. I was very unhappy about that.
It was released first in England, and I think it was released sort of like on a Thursday, and by the following Tuesday, it was #1. I mean, it was the fastest #1 that I've ever had in England. So there was something about this song. So obviously Charlie was delighted, and the same thing happened in America, which surprised me even more.
He was very, very self-absorbed. You know, he was a combination, I suppose, like all great artists, of enormous doubts and total confidence. As I said before, he needed an audience, and he loved an audience, and he would look for an audience. And whenever people would come to the manoir, people would come to visit him, he would always get out what he was writing, whether it was The Freak, whether it was a script, whether it was his autobiography, and read pages of it. So that proves a certain confidence. And yet he always had doubts about what he did.
Education was the most important thing. I think he wanted us to have the best education possible. He wanted us to go to the best schools. As far as I'm concerned, you know, I was terrible at school, and it would get him mad, because he would say, you know, you must try. I says, you're not even trying. He said, it doesn't matter if you don't succeed, but you have to try. And, I never liked school at all, so he wasn't pleased at all.
I think he thought that we really had to learn to fight our way through life, and like a lot of people of his generation, the great way of getting somewhere in life was to have an education, to a university education, and so that was the way he was very strict about that.
His obsession about death, well, the only obsession I noticed about death is an Irish gypsy read the palm of his hand and said he would die at the age of 80. It never bothered him until he reached 80 years old, and that got him very worried, I think, inside of him, and he was scared to get sick. He was scared to go out in case he'd get knocked down by a car and everything. But at the age of 81, then all that was finished, and he was fine again.
I think that at the end, he seemed to me to be tired of fighting these extraordinary battles against whole nations accused of being by McCarthy and all sorts of ugly people of that sort. And he thought he could make his little empire here in Switzerland and administer it from here, because he had control of all his silent films. He really had a very comfortable nest egg, and I thought he was a very good companion, except he didn't have very many opinions outside his own experience.
He had a cat he liked a lot, and he had a parrot that he was also, I think, very fond of. But he didn't like dogs, and he was frightened of wild animals. I remember once a bat flew into his room, and he went running out of the room in a panic, terrified. And I remember someone brought a wild animal into the house once that had been found to show him, and he said, "Oh no, please, Though he went on safari to Africa, and that he thought was fantastic, but he was well protected in the jeep, and we saw lions and giraffes, but he had a strange relationship to animals. I think wild animals, he didn't want to get too close to them.
My sister had a cat called Othello. It was a Burmese cat, and it was funny. It was like a dog. It followed my mother and father right around the garden when they would go walking and everything. But the extraordinary thing about them is when my father died, the cat lied on my father's chest for nearly 3 days. And each time he tried to go near him, he would show his aggression.
He certainly cast a light also on certain anomalies of American existence, largely American. That's largely to do with his private life and not necessarily with his films, although there are elements in the films which also deal with that subject and which have become more and more topical as time has passed.
That kidnapping was horrible. That was a nightmare. That was the worst nightmare. I mean, I don't really want to even remember. It was a horrible thing to do. Horrible. So I won't tell the bad things about it, but with time, there were things that happened which were incredibly funny, that were almost out of a Charlie Chaplin film. The Swiss police could not allow this thing to happen. They could not allow kidnappers to get away with it, because all the schools here, they're full of all these rich people's children. Can you imagine? Switzerland would be... So they had to solve this thing. They had helicopters. They had police disguised as tourists, as French tourists, German tourists. And their big man, their 007, their James Bond, was terribly carsick, and he would also always have to go out in the rolls when they were going to bring the money. When this man phoned, "It's Monsieur Rochat, you have to bring the ransom," the police would get disguised as the carpet in the rolls and would be awfully carsick and would throw up, and the chauffeur would be saying, "God, my car is so filthy, this man is always throwing up," anyway, nothing came to anything. And there was another occasion, there was a man at the post office, and he was listening. He had a little radio, and he was listening. And he heard a phone call going through to the manoir saying, it's Monsieur Rochat, meet me at Place Saint-François in 3 hours. And so the police were there. Everything was got together, and this little man at the post office, it was his lunch break, he got in his post office car, he went up to the manoir, the rolls came out, and he started following the rolls. The police, who were all in these civilian cars and these French cars, they saw him, they smashed him, they did a fishtail to him, dragged the guy out of the post car, put him against the thing, the gun in his back and everything. Meanwhile, neighbors were looking out, these very honest Swiss people, were saying, oh my God, they're attacking the postal van. They took down the number of the cars. They phoned the police. The postal van is being attacked. Quick, quick. The other policemen came, the real policemen, the ones that were the cantonal policemen, they came. They were attacking the other policemen. They said, mais non, mais these are our people. Oh, it's the chaplin affair. There were a whole lot of things like that, really scrambled things.